In 1914, the skies over Europe were calm until one brave pilot pulled the trigger. What began as observation turned into the first deadly duel above the clouds. No missiles, no radar, just wood, canvas, and raw courage. This is the story of the world's first dogfight, the birth of aerial combat. The first dogfight in history, 1914. Birth of aerial combat. When the First World War began in August 1914, airplanes were still new inventions, fragile biplanes made of wood, wire, and fabric. They had no guns, no armor, and no real purpose beyond reconnaissance. Pilots were seen as daring adventurers rather than combatants. Their mission was simple: to fly over enemy lines, sketch troop positions, and return safely. Yet within months of the war's beginning, the skies above Europe would change forever. What began as peaceful observation would become the world's first aerial battlefield. In the early days of the Great War, aircraft from both sides, Allied and Central Powers, often waved to each other as they passed in the sky. There was an unspoken code of gentlemanly respect among these knights of the air. However, as reconnaissance reports began shaping the outcomes of ground battles, each side realized that allowing enemy planes to roam freely above their trenches was no longer acceptable. The age of friendly waves was over. The age of dogfights had begun. The first recorded air-to-air combat took place on August 25th, 1914. Only weeks into the war, the incident occurred near Quénault, France, involving a French Voisin biplane and a German aviator. The French observer Corporal Quénault and his pilot Sergeant Joseph Frantz were on a routine reconnaissance mission for the French Army's 50th Aviation Unit. Their mission changed. Suddenly, when they spotted a German reconnaissance plane below them, at this point in history, aircraft carried no fixed weapons. Most pilots carried pistols, carbines, or even bricks to throw at their opponents. Frantz and Quénault, however, had mounted a Hotchkiss M1909 machine gun at the front of their Voisin 3, a daring and experimental decision that would prove revolutionary. As they dived toward the German aviatic, Quénault opened fire. The gun jammed after only a few rounds, but it was enough. Bullets struck the German aircraft, killing the observer instantly and wounding the pilot. The aviatic spiraled out of control and crashed behind French lines. Witnesses on the ground watched in astonishment. The French plane returned safely to its base, and the victory was officially recorded by the French military, the first confirmed aerial kill in history. The age of the dogfight had truly begun. The news spread quickly among the Allied and Central Air units. At first, the event seemed like a curiosity, but it marked a turning point in military thinking. Commanders realized that controlling the air meant controlling the battlefield. Air reconnaissance could no longer be left unchallenged. Soon, machine guns were being mounted on more aircraft, and engineers began experimenting with synchronization systems that allowed pilots to fire through the propeller arc without destroying their own blades. By early 1915, this innovation led to the rise of the true fighter plane, the German Fokker. It introduced the world to the concept of the fighter ace, a pilot who achieved 5 or more aerial victories. Men like Max Immelmann and Oswald Boelke became national heroes. And soon after, the legendary Manfred von Richter, the Red Baron, would dominate the skies with 80 confirmed kills. Yet, it all began with that single encounter in 1914. Frantz and Quénault's moment of courage in a fragile voice. Their aircraft, the Voisin 3, was slow and cumbersome with a top speed of barely 65 miles per hour. It was powered by a 120-horse Samson engine, could climb to only about 3,000 meters, but its forward-mounted gun and pusher engine design gave it one advantage: a clear field of fire. This design made it ideal for mounting the first machine guns used in air-to-air combat. Frantz and Quénault's victory didn't just change aviation, it changed warfare itself. Within a year, air battles became a daily reality along the Western Front. The romantic image of gallant pilots dueling in the clouds replaced the grim life of trench warfare below. Newspapers began to celebrate these new heroes, portraying them as modern knights, fighting duels of honor high above the mud and blood. However, the romance soon faded. By 1916, 1914, aerial combat had become deadly and relentless. Planes were faster, weapons more powerful, and survival rates much lower. Thousands of young pilots entered the war with only weeks of training. Few survived their first 10 missions. Still, the spirit of courage and innovation that began in 1914 endured. Sergeant Joseph Frantz survived the war and lived until 1979, often retelling the story of that historic day. Corporal Quénault, his observer, was less fortunate, dying in 1916 during another mission. Their legacy, however, remains immortal. Every modern fighter jet, every pilot's training manual, and every aerial combat doctrine traces its roots back to that moment, the first time a man aimed a weapon at another in the sky. Today, the term dogfight symbolizes courage, skill, and the human will to master the air. Yet, behind that word lies a profound truth. The sky, once seen as a place of freedom, became a battlefield because two men on a cold morning in 1914 looked down upon an enemy, air-closed, and decided that the air would no longer be neutral ground. It was theirs to defend. From that single burst of gunfire, history was rewritten. The first dogfight in history marks not just the birth of aerial combat, but the dawn of a new era in warfare, where battles would no longer be confined to the earth below, but fought among the clouds, where bravery met innovation and humanity took its first step toward ruling the sky. The first dogfight of 1914 changed the skies forever. A new era of air warriors had begun. From fragile biplanes to fearless legends, the world would soon meet its greatest ace. One man would paint his plane red and become a symbol of aerial supremacy. Join us in the next episode. Red Baron versus Allied Aces. Manfred von Richter's legacy.